Hola, bonjour, hi, ni hao to whoever and whenever you're watching this video. Today we're going to be going over NACLO problem 2021, problem number A, which is worth 10 points, and let's get straight into it. So, as we can see, if we just get a preview of the problem, it's basically a fill in the blanks problem with some of the context, some phrases in the target language, which is Malagasy, is given to us, and we want to be able to translate it from English to Malagasy and Malagasy to English from the phrases that they've given to us. Let's start by analyzing how this language actually works. So, if we look at the first two sentences in English, we see that it's the small rabbit smiled and the small rabbit smiles. The only subtle difference in these two sentences is that the first sentence is in the past, whereas the second sentence is in the present. If we look over on the Malagasy side, we see that there is also only one difference in the two sentences, which is the first character, which is N over here and M over here. Nitsiki ni bitrokeli versus mitsiki ni bitrokeli, which probably tells us that the first word in phrases in Malagasy must have the verb there. So I'm going to write that down when we're trying to figure out how the syntax of a language works. Syntax is basically where you place the subject, the verb, the object, and each language does it differently. So we can place the verb in the first place over here, and we are not sure yet whether the subject comes after that or the object, so let's keep on analyzing it. The next sentence after that says that the black rabbit smiles. We see that the verb, which was our hypothesis that the first word of every phrase is the verb, stays the same because mitsiki stays the same. We see that nibitro also stays the same. And the only thing that changed in these two sentences is the adjective. It became from small to black. And the only thing that changed in the Malagasy side is that it went from Kelly to Mainti, which tells us that the adjective must follow the noun in this case. Once again, in different languages, in some languages adjectives precede the noun, whereas sometimes the noun precedes the adjective. In this one, we see that it's let's write it over here: noun plus adjective. All right, we're getting pretty good insight here on the knowledge on the language. So let's keep moving forward. The next sentence is where we first see the concept of object nouns, whereas when you perform an action on someone. For example, in this case, the sentence is the dog meets the tortoise. We see that meets, the dog is performing an action, which is meeting. He's meeting the tortoise, which means that tortoise is going to be the object in this case. So we want to find out if the subject comes first or the object comes first. We know from the first three sentences that the rabbit must be nibitro. Must be nibitro in this case because we see this repeated. Kelly must mean small because that's the two adjectives on this side. And from our hypothesis that adjective follows the noun, then mainti must mean black. So let me just go ahead and write that down really small over the things. Rabbit, small, and black. Perfect. So now, we know from our sentence structure that the verb must be the first word of the sentence, and it's present, which also gives us some insight on why there was a ni and versus why there was a me in all of these four ones. We see that the tense is the only one that changes, which probably tells us that ni must mean past, me must mean present. So going back to the sentence, which was the dog meets the tortoise, we see that we don't know what dog or tortoise is, so I think we're just going to have to skip this for now. And we see that the tortoise is in the next sentence, so maybe we can get some more information from that. The next sentence on the Malagasy side, the English side, says that the tortoise protected the rabbit. Once again, it is utilizing the concept of object nouns. The tortoise is performing an action, it is protecting the rabbit over here. So we see that out of the nouns here, we have ni sokatra, ni alika, ni bitro, ni sokatra. We know from the previous sentences that bitro means rabbit, so we must know that bitro is rabbit over here, and that leaves the only other noun in the sentence, which is the tortoise, which tells us that since the rabbit came first, we know that bitro is rabbit, that means the object comes first in the sentence, before the subject actually, which might be kind of weird to English speaking people because in English we say the tortoise protected the rabbit, the subject, the tortoise, is performing the action, so we say that first. But in Malagasy and many other languages, they might have the object come first before the subject actually. and this helps us decide that Socatra must mean tortoise, and going along with our hypothesis that verb, object, subject, we see that is also reflected in the sentence preceding that, which was the dog meets the tortoise. Up until this point, we did not have any knowledge of what dog or tortoise is, but if we look at the next sentence after this one, we know that tortoise is actually Socatra over here, and Alika must mean the dog in that case. So we have our first example, our first exercise over here, which is the tortoise meets the dog. We immediately notice that it is the exact same thing as this one, except the subject and object are switched. So that's exactly what I'm going to do when I convert it into Malagasy. So I'm going to write mi haona, which means meets, because that's the verb over here. And I'm going to switch the two nouns, ni Socatra, ni Alika. I'm going to write ni Alika, ni Socatra. In this case, the tortoise is the subject, and that's why it comes after. That's why tortoise comes after the subject, which is, which comes after the object, which is the dog. Next up, we have to translate from Malagasy to English, and we see that the verb given to us is nitsiki. And if we scan over here, we see that nitsiki has been used previously before, which tells us that the verb over here has to be smiled. We have ni Socatra menti. We know that Socatra means tortoise from over here, so we're gonna put Socatra as tortoise. I'm just trying to build up what the content of the sentence, and I will translate it into the grammatical English sense after. And we want to figure out what menti is. Menti is probably an adjective, because we know that the adjective follows the noun. And if we quickly once again scan, oops, I forgot the K here. If we quickly scan, we see that menti means black from one of the previous examples. So we're going to put black here. So it's going along the line that smile, tortoise, black. So pretty obvious what that would translate to. The black tortoise smiles. That's why I find it really useful to write out like really small on top what it actually means, so I can always reference back to it when I need to see if I have to when I have to translate and come up with words that I don't know. Going on, we see that nothing has changed from the first question and the second question. It's just those phrases keep getting bigger, and they give us more context. So if we analyze this one, now instead of using the, which is the article, they're using demonstratives, which is this, that. So we want to try to figure out how we would translate demonstratives. We see that it follows the same sentence, ni haona, which I remember that mi haona over here meant that meets, so that means ni haona, going from our hypothesis over here that the past and present indicators would be met, the past tense of meet. And then we know that bitro means rabbit from our previous sentences. And we know that the adjective always follows the noun, which means that lehibe must mean large. And it says this large rabbit met the bird. We know the word for the from the previous examples is just ni, so that means this is ni means the, and vorona means bird, because bird is the object and the object comes first from our sentence structure over here. And which leaves us with two words in the sentence, iti and iti. So my guess at this point is that iti probably is supposed to precede as well as follow the noun that you're trying to describe as this. I think that this would also transfer into that demonstrated, which we can see over here that ini and ini are doing the same thing as iti and iti over here. So let's go ahead and analyze the second sentence. It's that dog protects the large tortoise. Once again, the verb is going to be first. We see this would be protect. Socatra means tortoise. We know that from the previous examples. Lehibe would be the adjective, and it also transfers from, it also is mentioned in the previous example over here. So we don't need to write that again. Oops. And ini alika ini, which is that dog. And since there's no adjective with dog, we also know from the previous examples that alika means dog, and ini must mean that. It's kind of an interesting take, actually, how they use the same word, iti, noun, iti for this, and ini, noun, ini for that. Alright, let's continue. So the next one is the cat greets this green frog. So once again, let's do our usual procedure. We know that the verb is going to be the first, which means this means greet. We have sahona, which would be the object because the object comes after the verb, and in this case the object is this green frog. We see the same use of the before and after employed over here. So we know that frog is over here, green is over this from the adjective noun adjective rule, the iti, and then nisaka, which would be the cat because that would be the subject in the sentence. Moving on, the next sentence is this small dog spoke. Once again, the same thing. This would mean spoke. We would have this small dog would be the only. There's no object in the sentence. We see the same use of the iti and iti employed over here. So we mean that this means alika means dog, and Kelly means small. And these are also words that have been mentioned here before, but just so that we don't have to scroll up and down again and again, I'm just gonna write it again. So our first task over here, which is this small dog speaks. Once again, keep going through the steps as always. We're gonna put the verb first. We know that spoke is ni teni, and we also know that the past and present indicators are a prefix of ni and mi. So that's what we're gonna do over here. We're gonna write it exactly as it is, but just change the prefix from ni to mi, and then write teni. That we're done with the verb, and now we have this small dog. We know that this from this one is that it's iti is before the noun as well as after the noun, so we're gonna write that iti. And we have small dog. Do we write it as small dog in Malagasy too? No, we write it as dog small because we know that the noun always is before the adjective. The phrase the small dog is the same as over here, so we know it's gonna be the same as alika Kelly, and then we have to always end off with the iti again because we had to translate this. Alright, two more. We got this. So the second to last one is the niaro, nisaka, iti, bitro, lehibe, iti. So this is one of the long words. So once again, we're just gonna break it down step by step and see what it means. Niaro. We want to scan. The phrases that are given to us to see if we can see anything that matches. We see that miaro matches, and miaro means protects. Protects in this case. And we know from the past and present indicators, once again, we can change that. So we know that this must mean protected. And then we have nisaka, which would be the object in this case. And saka, once again, if we just scan it, we see that saka means cat over here. So we're going to write cat. We have the use of iti employed, which means that we're going to be using some kind of this form, as we see over here. So I'm just going to write that down as well, this. And then the last one, we're trying to find the subject, because the subject is always at the end of the sentence, which is bitro lehibe. If we just scan, we see bitro lehibe, the exact same phrase written over here, which is rabbit large. So I'm not going to write that down, I'm just going to write it over here. This, because it's iti and iti. And then we had rabbit large, which becomes large rabbit. Then we're going to have the verb. The verb we deduce that it's protected. And we're going to have the last one, which is the object, which is cat. The cat, because we have ni written before saka. One last one. We have this green bird greeted that small frog. So once again, let's go through the usual steps. We're going to have first, in Malagasy, we write the verb first. So we're going to write, we see that the verb over here is greeted. If we scan, we see greets, and we see that the greets is a pretty long word over here, mi ara haba. But we know that we're going to change the prefix to change the tense. It went from greets to greeted. So instead of mi ara haba, we're going to write ni ara haba. Okay, we're taking care of that. Now we have to write the subject or the object. We have to write the object because the object is always before the subject. The object in this case is that small frog, because that is what the action is being performed on. That small frog. We know that that indicator is with ini and ini before and after the noun, so we're going to write ini. Now we have the noun. The noun is the small frog. Once again, we know that the noun is before the adjective, so we're gonna see what frog is. If we just scan it, we see the green frog over here. Green frog is Sahona Maitso. So we can write Sahona as the frog. To find small, once again we can just scan. We have small dog. Small dog, we see that small Alika. Oh, sorry. Dog means Alika and Kelly means small in this case, so we can just add the adjective of small, which is Kelly in this case. Sahona Kelly would mean small frog. Now that we're done with the noun phrase, we can conclude it with once again writing ini, because that's how they describe demonstratives. So we're done with that part of the phrase, and now we have the subject, which is this green bird. We know that this is by iti and iti before and after the noun phrase, so we're going to do that again. Iti, and now the phrase is green bird. Once again, we're just going to scan to find bird, 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 and we find it over here. We have bird as vorona over here, so we're going to write that, vorona, and we want to find green. And I remember they said green frog somewhere. Where was it? Oh, it's right over here, green frog. Whoops, that's the wrong pencil. Green frog over here. So we see frog is sahona, that means green mean maitso, so we're going to write maitso, which makes vorona maitso, green bird. And we're going to end off with the ini, or sorry, the iti, because we want to use the this demonstrative. One of the longer sentences, but that's how you would translate the last one, and let's cross that off too. So yeah, this is how you would go about solving this 2021A problem. Always write these small things. Always write what you know and what you don't know about a language. Always have your sentence structure, which is called the syntax. Always have small things like prefixes, suffixes. Always know the order. Is the adjective coming first or is the noun coming first? And sometimes weird things like, oh, for mentioning this, we're going to use it before. We're going to write iti, which is the word before and after the noun phrase in this case. So which would throw some people off, because they would have to write ini and then consecutively iti after that, and they might want to omit that for some reason because it's confusing, and we haven't seen an example like that in this case. But always remember, that's how the rules of language work, and there are no exceptions to rules unless given to you in the problem, and there was none given to us in the problem. So yeah, I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.